so here we are at last at the end of the film going season of yet another year, 2016. And while I've heard many people proclaim that 2016 was one of the worst years of film in recent memory, I must strongly disagree with these statements. I firmly believe it to be one of the very best years for film in recent memory. However, I will say that you had to look a little bit harder than the average film goer may have been willing to look in order to find great films this last year. The average filmgoer typically attends the bigger budget blockbuster films and ignores the smaller independent, foreign, and more abstract films, which is a damn shame because these are typically the films in which the most care and time and dedication are poured into by the men and women who work on these films. It most certainly was an abysmal year for big budget studio films and blockbusters, but if you're willing to look a little bit harder, then you would have found some absolutely fantastic films. I saw around 80 movies or so that were released theatrically in the United States at some point in 2016. Granted, I do not go out of my way to see every film. I only attend films that interest me and that I think I may enjoy. If I were a paid film critic then, I'd probably attempt to see more. So understand when I say that I saw 80 films, that one of them was not Nine Lives or Norm of the North, films that are obviously horrible. Additionally, while I did manage to see just about everything I wanted to, due to time, money, or accessibility, it simply was not possible for me quite to get to everything. So this is my personal film going experience of last year and not necessarily a retrospective review of everything from 2016. So keep that in mind, and instead of a top 10, I'm actually going to list 40 films, 15 solid films, and then my 25 favorites of the year. This is because I genuinely believe all of these films are worth seeing. So, without further ado, here are my favorite films of 2016. Number 40 is the documentary 13th. Number 39 is the film Jackie. Number 38 is the animated film Zootopia. Number 37 is the South Korean horror film Train to Busan. Number 36 is the coming of age film Kicks. Number 35 is the 80s comedy Everybody Wants Some. Number 34 is Fences. Number 33 is Swiss Army Man. Number 32 is the raunchy R-rated animated film Sausage Party. Number 31 is Pop Star. Number 30 is Captain America Civil War. Number 29 is the comedy Morris from America. Number 28 is the Iranian horror film Under the Shadow. Number 27 is Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. And number 26 is the adaptation of Shakespeare's play Macbeth. My number 25 movie of the year is De Palma, a fascinatingly simple documentary that details the very expansive film career of the director Brian De Palma. I'm not a huge De Palma fan, I really only enjoy a couple of his movies, but I was swept away by this documentary, which has stories and details that he provides from his very long and interesting career as a filmmaker. If you love movies in general, definitely check this one out. Currently, it's streaming on Amazon Prime. My number 24 film on my list is 10 Cloverfield Lane, a long-awaited sequel slash spin-off slash continuation to the J.J. Abrams produced 2008 film Cloverfield, which was a found footage film that I enjoyed quite a bit. 10 Cloverfield Lane is even better than that film, and it's very different genre exploration from the original film. It's a claustrophobic, suspenseful, and tension-filled film that leaves you guessing right up until the very last scene. If John Goodman is left out on Oscar night nominations for this film, I will be very disappointed. My number 23 film of the year is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. How exciting is it that we get to receive a Star Wars film every year for at least 6 or 7 years straight? I love Star Wars, so that's pretty exciting to me, especially with how great The Force Awakens was, and now Rogue One. Disney is not letting us down. There are aspects of Rogue One I like better than The Force Awakens, and vice versa. I will say the characters in this movie are not nearly as interesting as what they were in The Force Awakens. But the battle sequences were mouth-watering in this film. I believe this to be the best made blockbuster of the year. Even non-Star Wars fans could find a lot to enjoy in this film. Maybe they wouldn't get all the fan service, but then that would be a reason for them to watch the other movies. So my number 22 movie of the year is The Nice Guys. This is a hilarious 70s buddy cop movie that is greater than most films in that genre due to the chemistry and the performances of the two leads, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, and because of the fantastic writing and directing from Shane Black. I thought this film was solid upon my first watch, but I realized after a second viewing how much I liked it. If you really want a funny and witty movie with some hilarious dark humor, definitely check this one out. I loved The Nice Guys. My number 21 film is The Wailing. This is a South Korean horror film that I didn't find out about until much later in the year. But I'm so glad that I was able to see it. This film has some genuinely disturbing and frightening sequences, along with some very interesting characters. The big issues here for me were its length, and some portions of the story are a bit convoluted. I feel I need to see it a couple more times to fully grasp everything that's going on. But this was just one of the many fantastic horror films that came out this past year. Definitely check this one out if you're a horror fan. And it's actually currently streaming on Netflix, so you can check it out over there. My number 20 film on the list is The Edge of 17. This is a wildly funny and at times sad and very realistic coming of age story that's set in the present day. The main character's struggles aren't really that unique, maybe to this generation, and teenagers in general for that matter, but what makes the film so compelling is how real it feels and the performances from everyone involved, especially Woody Harrelson and Haley Steinfeld, who plays the main character. Kelly Freeman Craig, who wrote and directed this, definitely has a sense for writing dialogue and scenes that are compelling, yet incredibly awkward and real. This is one of several very good coming of age films that I saw this year. It wasn't the best one or the most unique, but it's certainly one of the best written and worth seeing. One of my favorite high school films from recent memory. My number 19 film of the year is Green Room, a brutally realistic, violent, unnerving, terrifying, and sickening horror film. Green Room seemed to hit all of those things right on the nose for me. I appreciate that everything the characters did in this movie seemed to make sense if the average person was stuck in a situation like this. I won't say too much about this if you haven't seen it, but let's just say a punk band gets stuck at a neo-Nazi bar slash club, and due to being in the wrong place at the wrong time, everything goes to shit real quick. So if that premise doesn't get you, I don't know what will. Patrick Stewart is also amazing as the leader of the neo-Nazis, albeit a tad underutilized. And I also didn't really like any of the characters except really Anton Yelchin's character. Otherwise, another excellent horror film from last year, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. My number 18 film on the list is Sing Street. I loved this movie. This is yet another coming of age film that came out this year, but this one has a much more unique perspective than The Edge of 17 did. This is a high school movie that takes place in Ireland during the 80s. The music was fantastic, the performances were heartfelt, the story is engaging, the protagonist is dealing with a slew of conflicts throughout the film, which drives the pace along. Camera work and editing are sharp, direction's focused. My really only complaint was at times it was a bit cheesy, but it's great to see a music-oriented high school drama comedy that takes place in the 80s in Ireland. It's definitely a very unique film. I had a blast, and I highly recommend seeing this. It's currently on Netflix, so definitely check it out. My number 17 movie on the list is American Honey. This is one of the most American films of the year, and one of the most telling of the poor youth in America. Yet it's directed by an older British woman named Andrea Arnold, so that's kind of odd. Nonetheless, I thoroughly enjoyed American Honey, which is also a coming-of-age story about poor teenagers in today's America who are traveling the South and the Midwest in a van selling magazines. And the story tells all the things they're doing during this time while they're trapped in a van going to hotels and selling the magazines. Andrea Arnold traveled with actual magazine selling youth in the U.S. to prepare for her creation of this film. Shia LaBeouf is such a grossly underrated actor, and his performance in this film is absolutely stellar. And newcomer Sasha Lane also holds her own as the main character. I can't recommend this film for everyone, though. The film is intentionally long at 162 minutes, framed with 4:3 aspect ratio. All the characters are vile or horrible in some way, which makes the film very hard to watch at times, and it also becomes very artsy in its direction and style. If you like those things, then definitely check it out. Otherwise, I would say to avoid it if you don't. The other interesting aspect of the film is that all the music you hear is played in the film. It's what the characters are listening to, which adds another sense of realism to an already very raw, real, and uncomfortable film. My number 16 film on the list is Don't Breathe. In a year that up to the point when this came out was already filled with many great horror films, Don't Breathe came along as yet another fantastic horror film. It was fantastically directed, written, shot, edited, acted, and scored. It was one of my favorite films that I saw last year simply because of how taut and concise it was. There's no BS with this movie. At less than 90 minutes, it's very fast paced, just like Lights Out was, which was another decently made horror film from the summer. The intensity almost never lets up from start to finish. And I also love how this film intentionally minimized use of sound to create a very realistic feel of being in a house where it's dead silent and you have no idea what's going to happen next. Definitely check this one out if you love horror movies. I had a blast with Don't Breathe.